happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day.
Faith of our founding forefathers and mothers.
Jesus walked.
When Jesus walked.
History is God's providence in human affairs. Noah Webster.
When Jesus walked.
Mary Ellyn Pleasant, entrepreneur, 1814 to 1904.
In 1814 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Mary Ellyn Pleasant was born free as Mary Ellen Williams. Her father, Louis Alexander Williams, was a native Kanaka, a Polynesian. He was an Hawaiian, and her mother was a, quote, negress from Louisiana, unquote, to use her own words. In 1826, because schooling was unavailable to blacks in Pennsylvania, Pleasant's well-educated father took his daughter north to Massachusetts, where schooling for blacks was permitted, to live with some of his white Quaker associates, a family called the Hussies. After Williams left his daughter in their care, although he sent money for Mary's schooling regularly, Grandma Hussey forsook Mary's education and made her work in their store. However, Mary quickly became indispensable, declaring,
"Few people could get out of the store without buying something from me."
In God's providence, although she was able to learn to read and write in her spare time, her store experience taught her business and human behavior. In her free time, she frequently visited the black side of town called Newtown, where she met and was a protege to a black abolitionist named Absalom Boston, where she also attended church. The whaling industry was booming, and as men went off to catch whales, many of the women ran the businesses, such as stores, hotels, and restaurants, and Mary Ellyn Pleasant was watching and learning. In 1842, she left for Boston to better herself, where she learned the skills of making boots and sewing vests, where she met and married James Smith, all within a month. Mr. Smith was a combination of Cuban, Taino Indian, and African, however, identified as Cuban. Furthermore, he was extremely wealthy, owning a home in Boston and a plantation in Charlestown, Virginia. However, Smith was an abolitionist and would often purchase slaves and give them their freedom. Sadly, Smith soon died after their marriage, but left Pleasant his vast fortune. However, on his deathbed, he made Mary make one promise.
"Please, do your best to use my fortune to free the slaves."
"I promise with a full heart,"
she responded. The money he left her was $45,000, which is equivalent to $1.2 million today. Subsequently, Mary Ellyn married John James Pleasant, who had been the steward of Smith's estate in Virginia. They quickly left for California to take advantage of the gold rush. John James Pleasant became a cook on a steamer, while Mary Ellyn Pleasant became a moneylender and an investor. She was able to turn her money over and quickly tripled her net worth to over $4 million. Soon Pleasant began reading and hearing about John Brown, who was a white, violent abolitionist. In her heart of hearts, she secretly swore to help him. However, she did not know how to meet him. When she heard he was scheduled to speak in Ontario, Canada, John James and Mary Ellyn decided to attend. She took out a $30,000 treasury note from her bank account to give him, which is equivalent to $1,072,000 today, and they were on their way. When the time came for them to meet, being even more impressed, she and John James gave him all they had with them, which was $45,000, equivalent to $1.3 million today. They discussed the details, and Mary Ellyn and John James traveled to Virginia, where they began informing the slaves of the fast approaching revolt. Many slaves were excited to get involved in the fight for their freedom. When the day finally came, Brown and his small contingent were caught, arrested, sentenced to death, and John Brown executed in 1859. She and John James feared for their lives, as all the conspirators were sought by authorities. However, after not being discovered, she returned to California. Even with a large hit on her wealth from the John Brown debacle, she became a domestic servant and then purchased a large boarding house where she entertained big-name people, serving them extravagant 12-course meals which she made herself. She purchased a second large mansion of 3 floors and more than 30 rooms, where she catered to emancipated slaves and taught them skills. Mary Ellyn left behind a net worth of $600,000, which is worth $16.2 million today. However, at her peak, she had over $1 million, which is over $28 million today. God gave Mary 2 obvious passions from which we today can learn and emulate. First, the blessing of financial multiplication, and second, the passion to end slavery and free the slaves. In other words, Pleasant is an example of one purpose of financial abundance: to establish righteousness in the earth. Psalms 112:3 says, "Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures forever." Remembering her first husband's instruction, Mary Ellyn Pleasant attempted to live out his dying wish and free the slaves, declaring,
Before I die, I want to let the world know how I tried to keep my promise.
which in accomplishing rightfully earned her the title Harriet Tubman of California.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me